The second that the shock wore off, Tyler lunged at me and tried to beat me up, but I was no longer just a weak boy, and while he had gotten himself an office job, I had gotten a job in a factory and was in much better shape. It didn't take much for me to overpower him and to punch him so hard that it knocked him unconscious. During the scuffle, Claire ran out of the house in tears. After the fight ended, I knew that my parents would kick me out anyways after that, so I went straight to my room and packed all of my belongings up and left. Hey there, my name is Jared, and just listen till the end of my story. I doubt that you'll think very highly of me once I've completed my story, but I hope that you will at least think that maybe I'm not entirely in the wrong. So let's start off with saying that my family is pretty rotten. My parents have always pit my brother Tyler and I against one another. They seem to thrive on watching us compete for their love. It was rather exhausting, to be honest. Hey, Mom and Dad. I got a B+ on my latest math test. Well, I got an A+ on my latest math test. Not sure why you think your measly B is something to be proud of. Tyler is right, Jared. Looks like you need to try harder. As if Jared is such an idiot. I'm amazed that he could even get a B at all. They would constantly measure our achievements against what the other could do. Eventually, I got bored of trying to constantly compete and just decided to stop. Instead, I just focused on working on myself and trying to figure things out on my own. As a result, I think that Tyler ended up being a lot closer to our parents than I did. On Tyler's birthday, my parents will get him lots of gifts, including the latest iPhones, whereas on my birthday, if I'm lucky, I will get a home-baked cake from Mom. Often enough, I felt like an outsider in my own family, but it was either that or constantly fight and participate in games for affection and attention, and I really had no interest in that. Since Tyler is older, he left the house first and went off to school and ended up getting a decent job once he graduated, and so he moved into his own apartment. For me, I had decided to go to a local college when I came of age. However, I had a really hard time finding a job, and so I've been living at home while I've saved up enough money to finally be able to afford a place of my own. Then one day, my brother brought home this beautiful woman. Her name was Claire, and the second she walked through the door and greeted my parents and I was incredibly attracted to her. But of course, I kept this to myself, since she was my brother's girlfriend, and I wasn't going to do anything that would jeopardize their relationship. However, as my brother introduced her, I got the feeling that maybe they weren't a very good fit for one another. Hey guys, this is Claire.
It's very nice to meet all of you.
It's very nice to meet you as well.
Tyler has told me so much about you guys, and I just hope...
Okay, that's enough, babe. Hey Dad, did you watch that game last night? If it happened once, even twice, then I could just overlook it as my brother being a bit too excited to introduce us to this new girlfriend, but he constantly interrupted her. It was like he didn't want to give her a chance to talk. It bothered me greatly, but it really wasn't my place to judge their relationship. I suppose it would have bothered me less if the little that I did get to speak to Claire. I found out that we had so much in common. We liked the same movies, music, and even both enjoyed seeing plays and musicals. Something that Tyler absolutely hated. I think I could have spoken to her for hours about plays, but the time came, and the two of them left for the night. A week later, I went to visit my brother and bring him some cookies that our mom baked for him, and when I arrived at their home, Claire answered the door. Instantly, my heart dropped as I noticed that she had a fat lip and a black eye. Hey Claire, how did you get hurt?
Oh, this? Well, I fell down some stairs. I can be very clumsy.
What stairs? You guys live in a bungalow. You don't have stairs.
Oh, well, they were at work.
Claire, those wounds look fresh, and it's Sunday. You had Saturday off from work. Did Tyler do this? Her expression told me that he had, but she was incredibly reluctant to say anything. Until I reached out and held her hand in mine. I did my best to have an expression that told her that she could tell me anything and I wouldn't judge.
Yes. But he didn't mean to. He was just really upset and wasn't really thinking about what he was doing. He swears that it won't happen again.
Do you want me to speak with him?
No. No, please. He swore it would never happen again, and I believe him. Plus, it's probably my fault since I nag him sometimes.
I was so incredibly angry, but I respected her wishes and didn't say anything, although I very much wanted to go and beat him up for hurting such an amazing woman. He truly did not deserve her. But sadly, it wasn't my place to tell him as much. Weeks passed, and I decided to head over to my brother's house to check up on him. Just as before, he wasn't home and Claire was. When she answered the door, I noticed instantly that she had a black eye. I was beyond furious. Claire! Did my brother do that to you? Tell me the truth.
Yes, he did. But what am I supposed to do? It's not like anyone else would want to date or marry me.
Oh, that's just crazy talk. I bet there are millions of men out there that would see you for the beautiful, smart, and funny woman that you are, and wouldn't abuse you like my brother is. I could see that she was entertaining my idea, although what I didn't notice was that she was looking at me with a little desire in her eyes.
Like who? Who would be interested in me?
Well, like someone like me, for example. Our eyes suddenly locked, and we looked deeply at one another, and before either of us knew what was happening, we were kissing each other. And one thing led to another, and we ended up sleeping together. We both knew it was a mistake, but both of us were a better match than my brother and her. However, I just left and went home and tried my best to put what happened between us at the back of my mind. A couple months passed, and Tyler and Claire came over to visit my parents and I, and as soon as they came into the house, Tyler announced that Claire was pregnant. It wasn't even in an excited tone, but rather a very bored and rather displeased one. I could tell that Claire was less than happy with the way he was acting, but I definitely didn't expect what would happen next. Mom and Dad. Claire is pregnant. This is wonderful news. Finally, a grandchild in the family and our favorite son will be the father. We need to celebrate.
Oh yes. Oh Tyler, we are so happy for you. We have done such a wonderful job raising you, and this just confirms that we invested all our effort into a son worthy of carrying our family name to another generation.
I don't think you have enough room in that apartment of yours, which means you should really move in here.
That's a great idea. Jared, that means that you need to move out right away so that Tyler can move in. That way we can take care of you and the new baby as well.
I could tell that Claire was astonished at the way my parents were treated Tyler and I. The amount of praise he was getting, and the way that my parents were just throwing me out surprised her. Of course, it was hardly a surprise for me. Thankfully, I had saved up enough to get my own place and was already planning on moving out shortly anyways. But they didn't know that, and so they're just throwing me out stung.
How can you people treat Jared like this? Has it always been like this?
Yes, it has, but it's okay, Claire. It's nothing new to me.
But it's wrong. And you didn't raise Tyler to be a good son. In fact, you raised a completely selfish and abusive asshole. He not only hits me whenever he gets annoyed or angry, but he has cheated on me with at least 6 different women that I know of, and probably more that I don't. Not only that, but he's too stupid to realize that the baby isn't even his. As soon as I found out that you were cheating on me with so many women, I stopped having sex with you and got myself tested to make sure you hadn't given me a disease. Thankfully, the test came back clean.
Wait a minute. If the baby isn't Tyler's, then whose is it?
It's Jared's baby. The one son that you didn't raise but turned out to be a decent and good man.
Everyone, including me, was shocked. However, while everyone else was angry and mortified, I was elated. Here was this beautiful and intelligent woman singing my praises, and to top it all off, she just announced that she was carrying my child. I had to stop myself from proposing to her right on the spot. The second that the shock wore off, Tyler lunged at me and tried to beat me up, but I was no longer just a weak boy, and while he had gotten himself an office job. I had gotten a job in a factory and was in much better shape. It didn't take much for me to overpower him and to punch him so hard that it knocked him unconscious. During the scuffle, Claire ran out of the house in tears. After the fight ended, I knew that my parents would kick me out anyways after that, so I went straight to my room and packed all of my belongings up and left. It took me a week before I found myself somewhere to live, and shortly after that I got a call from Claire saying that she wanted to meet up for coffee. During our meetup, she told me that she wanted to keep the child and wanted to know if I would be interested in dating her as well. We both knew it would be awkward, but I was more than willing to give it a try. After that fight with my brother, he went off the deep end and began sleeping with as many women as he could. Not only that, but he has also since started using drugs as well, which have caused him to have several run-ins with the police. So much so that my parents, who have been funding his legal battles, are on the verge of losing their house just to keep bailing him out. Which serves them right. As for Tyler himself, not only has he been in and out of jail, but I have heard that he has gotten so many sexually transmitted diseases that his health is constantly poor. As if that wasn't bad enough, he now also walks with the aid of a cane because one of the women he slept with had a jealous husband who found out that Tyler had slept with his wife and shot Tyler. The bullet shattered Tyler's hip, and now he has no balance without his cane. As for Claire and I, we did start dating, and it didn't take long before we realized that we were indeed perfect for one another. Our son was born a little while ago, and not long after that, we got engaged and our wedding will be next year. We rarely talk to my parents or Tyler anymore, and honestly, both of us are okay with that. Neither of us really want to get tangled up with all their drama. It's bad enough that our relationship started off because of such drama. So what do you think? I know that what we did was wrong, but can you honestly say that it was that bad?
I told y'all, but you didn't believe me. Ivy has always been like this. She lost her virginity 2 years ago. She sleeps with different guys, and Chris just happens to be the one she intentionally slept with because we were dating.
She was lying so much that I was irritated. Worst of all, they believed her. I tried to tell them I was raped, but they refused to listen and called me a liar. I was thrown into a state of shock when my parents renounced me as their child. Growing among cousins and other extended relations is cool, but it also has its disadvantages. Aunties can be quite dangerous when they get envious of you or your child, so beware of them. After my ordeal, I always reminded myself of that. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. Hi. I'm Ivy, age 29 and married with 2 kids. My grandparents had a very huge house where they lived. Every Friday, everyone in the family was to be at the family house. We usually stayed until the next day. It was called bonding. My grandparents were very serious about bonding. They had 4 children and all were married with kids. My cousins were all older than me, as my parents had a little trouble with childbirth before they had me. Being the youngest of all the grandchildren, my grandparents adored me. I was like their cherished puppy. Once during dinner, my second eldest cousin, who was sitting beside me, took my glass, which was nearly empty, and filled it up with juice before filling his. My aunt's daughter, Jenny, suddenly stretched hers too.
Fill up mine too, Carl.
Why should I? You have a jug beside you.
Didn't Ivy also have one beside her?
Yes, didn't she? Why can't you fill up Jenny's cup?
I was beginning to get tensed. Why were they doing that? If they continued, the dinner could get ruined. I was about to speak, but my mom beat me to it.
Okay, what's your deal with my daughter? I honestly don't understand what both your problems are. Are you crazy? How dare you? My daughter and I are now problematic. Wow, coming from you, that's so rich.
My mom was about to retaliate, but I stepped in. That's enough. We're being disrespectful to Grandma and Grandpa. Let's just eat, please. I'm sorry to everyone for being the issue. Let's eat, please.
You're not the issue, child. Do not say that. I'm glad. At least you're mature.
That passed. I finished high school and got into college. My grandparents advised my parents to let me apply at the same college my other cousins were. It was also where I'd wanted to apply, so I did, and passed. But the issue was, Jenny had always been jealous of me and was in the same school. Jenny was in her 3rd year when I got in. At college, she often acted like we never knew each other. She would walk past me and intentionally brush against my shoulder. However, I never spoke anything about it. I avoided her as much as I could. Since I was the shy type, I didn't know how to make friends. I had 3 more cousins there, so I mostly spent time with them at the cafeteria. One day, Jenny approached me. I was at the library and was surprised to see her in front of me.
I heard it. Did you think I wouldn't? Gosh, I can't believe you'd stoop so low.
I was confused. What was she on about? She had a deadly gaze on as she stared directly into my eyes. I asked what she was talking about, and she suddenly grabbed me by my hair.
You must think I'm dumb, right? I heard it all. You went behind my back to seduce Chris, didn't you?
I didn't even know who my husband was at the time. I'd heard people talking about him, but I hadn't seen him. Again, I asked her to be clear. Then she finally revealed the reason for her anger. Apparently, news was going round that Chris liked me, but the issue was Jenny had a crush on Chris. It was surprising to me, as we'd never even met each other. I tried to explain that to Jenny, but she wasn't having it. She pulled my hair tighter and warned me to stay away, or she wouldn't waste any time in making the school unbearable for me. When she left, I couldn't understand anything. Suddenly, Chris approached me. He introduced himself and told me he was in year 3. He asked if I was Ivy, and I replied that I was. Then he told me about what the rumors were saying, and how bothered he was about it. I was captivated by his handsomeness and the smart way he spoke. However, the matter at hand was more serious. Right when we were speaking and wondering how they even thought of pairing me of all people with him, Jenny rushed into the library, alongside some other girls.
So, the rumors are true? I can't believe you.
Before I could try to explain, she pounced on me. Jenny was quite big, so it was impossible for Chris to get her off me, especially with the way her friends were holding him back. By the time him and a few others around managed to separate us, I had a broken nose, lips, cuts around my eyes, on my chins and my right ear bleeding after she roughly pulled my earrings. I was immediately rushed to the school's clinic where the wounds were instantly disinfected. Our parents were summoned and my mom flared up.
What did Ivy do? Why do you hate her so much, huh?
Jenny's mother wasn't having it either. They nearly fought in the school's president's office, but were stopped. Her friends all pretended to not know about what caused the fight and only said we suddenly started fighting. Chris, however, told them that Jenny attacked first. When the CCTV was checked, they saw that it was true. While I got suspended for 3 days, Jenny got 3 weeks. It wasn't an easy period for the whole family, as everyone blamed Jenny after I told them it was about Chris. However, Jenny lied to them and said I was sleeping with Chris. Of course, no one believed her. They knew I wasn't such a person, and that clearly offended she and her mother. I returned to school after a month, and that was probably my worst mistake. 2 days after I returned, I was raped in an abandoned class. I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone about it, as I felt ashamed. I withdrew and took care of myself alone. Misfortune hit when I realized I was pregnant. I tried to hide it, but my mother's eyes couldn't be deceived for long. Once it was out that I was pregnant, the whole family, except my aunt and Jenny, were disappointed.
I told y'all, but you didn't believe me. Ivy has always been like this. She lost her virginity 2 years ago. She sleeps with different guys, and Chris just happens to be the one she intentionally slept with because we were dating.
She was lying so much that I was irritated. Worst of all, they believed her. I tried to tell them I was raped, but they refused to listen and called me a liar. I was thrown into a state of shock when my parents renounced me as their child. I begged with every strength I had in me, but they refused to listen.
You cease to be our daughter. You have embarrassed us. Get out.
My grandparents couldn't do anything. They wanted to help, but they were also disappointed and agreed with my parents. I was thrown out of their lives. With a child in me and no family to turn to, I was left stranded on the road. I walked about, not knowing where to go or what to do. That same night, Chris happened to come across me on the road, crying. He asked what happened, and I explained the whole thing to him.
No way. You don't deserve that. We have to report to the police. I'm going to go with you to your parents and let them know that nothing's going on between you and I, or even I and Jenny, or whatever her name is.
I refused. They'd thrown me out. There was nothing I could do about it. I told him I was going to get through it alone, but he refused. He blamed himself for it and invited me to his house. I got to know that he was an orphan and was working while schooling. I couldn't deny that he was doing quite well for himself. He let me stay under his roof and also fed me. Tragedy struck again when I had a miscarriage. I almost died, but Chris was there for me. He took me to the hospital and ensured I got the best treatment. I thought about my family often. I was disappointed at how easily they gave up on me. Least they could do was ask me to invite Chris over and question him, not just believe Jenny. I couldn't get over the pain and heartache their actions brought me. I managed to get a job, as I couldn't return to college or let Chris take care of me forever. He was good from the beginning. When he saw that my job as a waitress wasn't paying enough, he helped me secure a better job. We got closer with time, and of course, feelings began to develop. After 6 months of staying with him, I got myself an apartment. I was only 20 then. I worked even harder. Since I needed to finish my college education, I applied for scholarships so I could start afresh. Luckily, one clicked and I was in school again. Chris and I got into a relationship. My parents never called. They'd indeed abandoned me. I moved on and worked even harder. By the time I was in my second year in college and nearly my second year in a relationship with Chris, there was another rape case in the college. Chris told me the girl was raped after a fight with Jenny over a male student. I connected the dots, and it was similar to my case. I asked Chris if I could bring mine up again, and he promised to back me up, and it began. I returned to school and told them everything that had happened to me since the fight with Jenny. The news spread quickly. I discovered that the new victim was assaulted in the same place as me. So I requested that the CCTV footage of both days be checked. Action was put in place immediately. When they checked, it was discovered that the same guy was the culprit of both incidents. He was caught by the police and he confessed and was sent to prison. My parents heard about it and called, requesting to see me. I took Chris with me. While at my parents' house, he told them he'd never had anything going on with either Jenny or me, and he wasn't responsible for my pregnancy. My family were shocked. Jenny and her mother bowed their heads in shame. My parents and other family members apologized to me and urged me to return home, but I refused. I'd forgiven them, but I wasn't going to go back there. Just as they were still begging me, the doorbell rang. My dad and 3 police officers walked in. They revealed that they'd found out from the culprit that Jenny had paid him to commit the crimes. She was arrested on the spot. Her mother sobbed loudly and heavily as she followed them, begging the cops to not take her child. Well, I left my parents' house after assuring them that they had my forgiveness. I continued my life with Chris, working harder on our relationship, work, and school. I communicated with my parents quite regularly, but our relationship had been tainted forever, with the lack of trust they displayed at the time when I desperately needed them. After graduation, Chris and I got a house. We also got better jobs and were living well. He proposed to me, and I agreed. We were blossoming in love. Jenny's mother couldn't attend our wedding, as she was busy visiting her daughter in jail, where she was serving a 35-year jail term. We even heard from Jenny's mom that Jenny was raped by 2 guards. They were never caught or charged, and because of that, Jenny is traumatized. While in prison, she sometimes acts like she's mad. Jenny's mom is depressed and lives alone with 4 cats. As for me, 2 years after our wedding, we had our first child, a boy. When he clocked 2, his sister was born. I allowed my family to visit us at home, but I never let my kids go over to theirs. I also didn't allow a close relationship with their cousins, and Chris supported. Neither of us wanted a repetition of what happened to me, even though we knew they might not be as bad as Jenny. We just had to be careful. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
While she had everything she wanted served on a golden platter by my father. At 20, Zoey concluded that I wasn't meant to be in the house anymore. Of course, my dad agreed.
You don't need him since you have me, Daddy. Cut him off and let him leave.
My father did whatever his princess wanted. He kicked me out of his house without anything, not even clothes, because he got them for me. A good Samaritan, who's become my best friend now, helped me that night. Hi there, I'm Owen, and I'm currently 25 years old. I work as a nurse, and I'm, well, an orphan. My mom died when I was only 19 years old, and life was very unfair to me for 2 whole years after her death. Although, before her death, it also was. My father was alive then, but he didn't like me, simply because I was a boy. He had this unhealthy obsession with female children, and only cared about my sister. Well, adopted sister. My father had been so sure and hopeful that I turn out to be a girl, but my mom wanted a boy. Because he was so sure that the universe was on his side and I'd be a girl, he suggested for them to not check my gender until I was born. They both agreed on it and remained in the dark about my gender. My dad bought so many female clothings while my mom got unisex. She wasn't hooked on me being a boy, even though she wanted me to. When I turned out to be a boy, my dad wasn't happy. He showed that he wasn't, expressing frustration that the universe hadn't been on his side. For years, my dad held grudges against me for something I had no hand in. He didn't like me anywhere close to him and would yell at me for the slightest mistake. As I grew older, he began to trouble my mom too. He still wanted a female child, and they'd been trying for one, but my mom didn't get pregnant. He blamed her for it. The first time I ever got to bond with my dad was once when his company hit the highest sales. He'd been so excited that he'd asked my mom and I to dress up. "We're going to have fun at the park." I was filled with happiness. My friends always talked about how they went for picnics and dates with their parents, but all I did was sit quietly and listen to them with envy. Finally, I would be able to give my own story. I couldn't stop smiling that day. I dressed quickly and went downstairs to meet him. I was 11 then. I sat beside him with a smile, and he turned to me, but looked away after. He didn't smile back, but his acknowledgement meant a lot to me. When my mom was done, we all left for the park. It was going smoothly, my parents walking hand in hand and me beside them. Well, until my father began comparing us to other families. "Wow, those people have 3 girls? How lucky can they be? Unlike our family. Owen, you'd have been better if you were a girl. Unfortunately, you're just a boy." My mom was quiet and ignored him. I also did the same. I mean, I couldn't say anything to him, but I pretended to not hear him and focused on the noise in the park. He continued until he suddenly stopped a family. "All your children are females? Wow, you're the luckiest. Well, you have a good-looking young man there." Him? I didn't want him. If I'd known that he'd be a boy, I wouldn't have let my wife have it.
Now you're gonna hold it right there. Why do you always look down on Owen? You brought him here to have fun, but all you've done is continuously remind him of how you hate that he came out as a boy. Why are you blaming the child as if you weren't the one who produced him?
I'd never seen my mother so angry. Her voice was high, so I was afraid that people might hear them. Most of all, I was scared of having any of my friends there. However, it seemed as though the universe was against me, because my parents were so loud about cussing themselves out that everyone around was staring at us. My world shattered when I saw my loudest friend approaching. "Wow, your dad really hates you, Owen. Why didn't you ever tell us?" I was too embarrassed to say anything. I would beg him to keep it a secret, but I knew he wouldn't. I was done for. My mom grabbed my hand and pulled me away. When we returned home, my dad was nowhere to be found. The next day, I arrived at school to meet the expected. The whole school was talking about how my dad hated me. I couldn't concentrate. When I got home, I locked myself in my room and cried so much. Anyway, time passed, my dad not changing, and my mom not having a female child. After my 19th birthday, my dad brought up adoption. He still badly wanted a daughter, so he thought he could adopt one, but my mom wasn't having it. She vehemently refused, standing in her words that I was enough for them. But my dad thought otherwise. One day, they had a very big fight that landed my mom in a hospital. She was hypertensive, and getting all worked up and agitated had caused her to pass out. Her death was so quick and unexpected. I saw my whole life get destroyed when the doctor announced at the hospital that they couldn't help her. It was a traumatizing moment for me, and I grieved for a long time. And I thought my dad would respect my mom and forget about the adoption. However, 2 weeks after she got buried, he brought home a girl whom I was obviously older than. He introduced her as his daughter and urged me to get along with her. Believe me, I tried. I tried so much, but it seemed impossible. Zoey, my adopted sister, was all shades of evil. On the first day, she'd noticed the tension between myself and my dad and had easily caught on what was going on. She tortured me without pity and was having so much fun doing it. One day, with 3 of us in the living room, I brought a case up to my father. I needed to pay my tuition fees since I'd just gotten into my 2nd year in college, but my dad refused, claiming he didn't have any money to give me. Right after he barked at me for not having money, Zoey requested money for a change of wigs and shoes. It was twice more than the one I required. "I'll send it to you before night falls, my princess." I felt heartbroken. I stood up and tried to leave, but Zoey stopped me.
You only leave when I asked you to. Sit down.
I turned to my dad, hoping so much that he'd say something, but he never did. "Do what the girl says. She rules this house." I slowly lowered back to the couch, my mind scattered around different thoughts. Zoey continued that way. She was truly in control. She stopped me from entering the kitchen, restricted me from speaking unless asked. Eventually, she stopped my education, claiming it wasn't where I needed to be. I tried to fight again, but my father stood against me, and I ended up bending to their wishes. I stopped school and was made to stay home every day. Meanwhile, Zoey didn't miss class for a day. I was made to stay home and cook and clean and suffer, while she had everything she wanted served on a golden platter by my father. At 20, Zoey concluded that I wasn't meant to be in the house anymore. Of course, my dad agreed.
You don't need him since you have me, Daddy. Cut him off and let him leave.
My father did whatever his princess wanted. He kicked me out of his house without anything, not even clothes, because he got them for me. A good Samaritan, who's become my best friend now, helped me that night. He lent me his clothes and even allowed me stay in his house. He helped me get a job as a nurse after I got my nursing certificate a few years of moving in with him, and after 4 months of working, I got a small apartment. I hated Zoey and my father, so I never thought about them. One day, 3 years later, I ran into Zoey at my workplace. I pretended to have forgotten everything while she spoke to me. I got to know that my father had suffered from leukemia. They spent so much trying to cure him, all to no avail. They sold properties and took him to different hospitals, but no treatment seemed to work. Eventually, he died. The few properties he left behind got confiscated by the banks which he'd taken loans from without his beloved princess's knowledge. Anyway, she was broke, homeless, and desperately needed a job. I beamed within me. My father had received his punishment by suffering so much before dying, and the universe had brought Zoey for her share. I assured her that she was going to get the nursing job at our hospital, and she believed me. The people who'd be doing the interview were all my closest friends, and I'd opened up about what Zoey and my father had done. I asked them to give Zoey a huge humiliation while I prepared the final one. Of course, they agreed. I snuck into the office where everyone had kept their bags. The owner of the office was our boss, and he was very careless. I was sure I'd find something valuable lying around, and I did. About 8 bundles of dollar notes and a wristwatch that screamed it was expensive. Locating Zoey's bags, I dropped the items in there and zipped it close. Luck was on my side, as he had no CCTV camera in his office. The man was scared of it, so all cameras around him was taken away. That meant there'd be no evidence of me putting it in there. I left immediately. After a few minutes, Zoey rushed out of the boardroom. I could tell she was in tears. My colleague sent me a video he made of her being humiliated, and I couldn't help my laughter. Her documents were faked, and she couldn't even reply to simple questions about drugs. Everyone had laughed at her and called her several vile names, which made her run out. From the reception area where I sat, I heard my boss's loud voice ordering someone to stop. When I looked, it was Zoey. He asked if she'd seen his money and wristwatch, but she replied that she hadn't. My boss said she was the only one who'd left his office, but she maintained that she didn't steal. I passed my phone to the receptionist and asked her to start recording, which she happily did. I walked over to them. By now, most workers were watching them, alongside the other candidates and interviewers. "Excuse me, sir. I know her. She used to be my adopted sister before she sent me out of my father's house. She used to steal a lot, but I believe she stopped it now. Right, Zoey?" She looked at me with pure confusion in her eyes. Anyway, I turned to my boss, still playing my game. "Look how shocked she is. She wouldn't steal anything. I'm sure of that. If you don't believe, you can just search her to be sure." "I'm gonna do just that." He grabbed Zoey's bag from her and emptied its contents on the floor, the money and wristwatch falling out with everything else. I let out a dramatic gasp. "I'm so ashamed of you, Zoey. You've embarrassed me." My boss wasn't having it. While he was yelling at her, one of my colleagues who'd interviewed her butt in and told my boss that Zoey was also a quack trying to squeeze her way in and endanger the patients. He showed the video to him, and my boss was livid. He immediately contacted one of his police friends, and Zoey dropped to her knees, begging me to talk to my boss and begging the man to forgive her. I enjoyed seeing her that way. The police soon arrived, and she was immediately arrested. My boss pressed charges against her for stealing and lying. The state also found her guilty for carrying a fake nursing certificate around. Altogether, they earned her 8 years in jail. I posted the video of her, which the receptionist had recorded. Most workers did the same, and soon, she was everywhere on the internet. I visited her in jail to show her what she was getting popular for, and she nearly broke down the glass separating us in anger. Well, Before leaving, I managed to spread news around the prison that she was a liar and a thief, and everyone should avoid her. I couldn't wait to go there again and see her looking all defeated. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
For Halloween, Jana and Hayden always let Trisha go all out. But for me, they gave me a budget of just $10 to pull something together. This wasn't even remotely close enough to how much I need to get an actual costume. I've tried a few times every year to let them raise my budget by a few dollars, but nothing has worked. They also gave Trisha the brand new smartphone every time it came out. She never had to scream or beg for anything. Unfortunately for me, I was on my knees begging a few times for the cheapest flip phone available. Hey, I'm Sarah, and I'm so glad that the holiday season has finally come. I love the holidays, and I always make sure to go all out for the kids that I care for at my job. Though I seem all happy now, Christmas used to be a source of emotional pain for me. You see, my adoptive family was the cause of all of this trauma. I'll explain everything from the beginning to the end, all the way up to the moment that I left them. My parents, Jana and Hayden, used to love me very much. I knew that they had adopted me because Jana found out that she was infertile. Jana and Hayden always took me to theme parks and spoiled me like crazy. I was happy to live with parents that actually cared about me. But only about a few months after I had joined the family, Mom and Dad had a miracle. Jana became pregnant with a baby girl. After my baby sister Trisha was born, Mom and Dad were absolutely obsessed about her. My parents stopped spoiling me completely. They now did the opposite. When we went out, they'd get Trisha anything that she could ever want. However, they berated me if I even asked for the cheapest item available. Because I was only 5 when my sister was born, I was only upset and never understood why they would just suddenly refuse to get me anything. Now that I was older, though, it seemed perfectly clear. Everywhere we went, Jana would introduce Trisha as her miracle baby. Soon enough, my sister being the miracle baby became real old, though Jana didn't care at all. There was one time where my mom was supposed to just take us and our family's dog for a checkup, but spent 30 minutes talking about Trisha. I could tell that the veterinarian was pissed, but didn't want to say anything.
Oh, hey, Susan. I don't think I've introduced you and my kids. This is Sarah, my beautiful daughter. And this is Trisha. Oh, she was my miracle baby. We had Sarah because I didn't think it'd be possible for me to have a child of my own. But then, Hay and I managed to sprout little Trisha. Isn't she just beautiful?
Oh, yes, she is.
She's been such a bright star in my life that her photos are in my wallet and phone case. She's only 4, but she has so much ahead of her, and I'm so proud of our family for being able to have Trisha.
That's so cute. So let's get started with your dog.
Do you know what her first word was? It was puppy, because she had just seen a dog cartoon on TV. Isn't that the cutest?
Yes, Jana. So the dog...
She ended up liking puppies so much that we got her one. She even named him. His name is Bruno.
I'm not going to go through that whole conversation again, but just the beginning is enough to tell you everything that you need to know. The vet ended up trying to avoid Jana as much as possible, only coming into the room to inspect our dog and make small comments on his health. Anyway, this is just one of the many examples of how my family ended up being super toxic and only caring about my younger sister. For Halloween, Jana and Hayden always let Trisha go all out. But for me, they gave me a budget of just $10 to pull something together. This wasn't even remotely close enough to how much I need to get an actual costume. I've tried a few times every year to let them raise my budget by a few dollars, but nothing has worked. They also gave Trisha the brand new smartphone every time it came out. She never had to scream or beg for anything. Unfortunately for me, I was on my knees begging a few times for the cheapest flip phone available. My only reasoning was that I needed it for communication, and the truth was, I really did. Trisha always used her phone for games or social media. Anyway, my phone was one of the only things that I was ever allowed to get after my sister was born. As time went on, I had to learn to be more and more independent, while Trisha just sat back and everything came to her as she wished. Teenage me was extremely angered at everything I had to do. But now I think that working harder for myself was one of the most useful things I'd ever done. I remember needing to apply for my own part-time job seeing as Mom and Dad never let me have an allowance. I also had to fill out my own legal forms for the job and find a way to transport to work, too. Other things I remember doing was washing my clothes, cooking food, and most importantly, managing schoolwork and time. I will never forget those days in high school when Hayden went to the school to demand that Trisha was given good grades for her classes. Everybody knows that your grades are based on hard work from yourself, but Trisha hadn't gotten good grades, so our dad went to very different measures to help her manage. It was completely unfair, but you can't really stop a dad who was too lenient and had money. So that happened as well. One of the worst things, in my opinion, though, was having to watch Trisha open her mounds of gifts while I was forced to sit there and watch her open and have fun with each of them. Every year I only got socks or nothing as a gift for Christmas, and so I was basically tortured having to watch her. Of course, Trisha's birthday was also celebrated every year. She got a huge party with balloons and special guests, all planned out by party planners that were quite expensive, to say the least. Trisha was allowed to invite as many people as she wanted. And I am not kidding when I say that Trisha was very popular amongst her classmates. And with all of the love and attention for her, I was treated in complete contrast. I never got a birthday celebration, and the only time I got a gift was on my 16th birthday. My little sister had given me a small card with a $20 gift card. That was pretty nice of her. But other than that, I didn't get anything else. The most traumatizing moment that sort of sealed the deal for me was Christmas when I was 17. My whole family was invited to a big Christmas reunion, and they were quite ecstatic. Mom and Dad told me to prepare presents for all of my cousins and nieces and nephews. I was pretty happy to meet them for the first time, and I wanted to leave a good first impression on them, so I worked more hours at my job and bought many nice gifts for them. I was actually quite excited too. I thought that maybe I'd finally get a gift from them, since this was my family and maybe they're nicer than Jana and Hayden. So on Christmas Eve, our parents drove Trisha and me to their great-aunt's house. She was very rich, and I only found this out because we drove into the driveway of a huge mansion. I still remember lugging all of the gifts I had with me to the house. My sister did too, but someone soon came over and helped her with carrying her presents. We went inside, and there were way more people than I expected. I was quite nervous, but I decided to hide, and luckily, not many people noticed me. Dinner went by fine. Normally at home, Dad never let me eat too much since he said that he didn't want me wasting his hard-earned money, so I was always a little bit away from being actually full. Since I was on my own at this Christmas dinner, I was able to eat more, and I was happy. I thought, maybe this will be the first Christmas where things will actually go well. So apparently the whole family was supposed to stay at the mansion overnight, and then we all open our gifts in the morning. I found a guest room and fell asleep, hopeful for Christmas morning. I woke up the next day and went downstairs to see most of the family gathered around the tree. I watched as the kids were all given their gifts. Soon enough, though, the gifts for the kids were all passed out and I'd gotten nothing. The family moved on to the adults and they were all given a few gifts each. My heart sank. Where the hell were my gifts? Mom, where are the gifts for me?
What do you mean? This trip was our gift for you. And the dinner last night.
But everybody else has so many gifts. Why don't I have any?
Sarah, don't you dare throw a temper tantrum now.
Ah, Sarah, I have a gift for you. Merry Christmas.
This random lady came up to us and handed me a gift. But Mom quickly shoved her handbag into my arms and grabbed the gift out of my hands and opened it. It was a box of chocolates, and my eyes widened in surprise. A smile started spreading across my face, but it quickly diminished. Jana began to spew out some lies about why I couldn't have the chocolate.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Lila. Sarah is severely allergic to hazelnut. I'm so sorry, but thank you for the gift. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. How about I give Sarah $50 instead? No, thank you. You're always too generous. Thank you, though.
I wanted to kick and scream like a toddler at this point. I wasn't allergic to anything at all. In fact, I'd eaten a few hazelnut chocolates before. Was my mom just lying so I wouldn't get any gifts at all? I quickly walked away from my mom and the woman, running to hide in a nearby bathroom. I began to sob, but soon realized I had Jana's purse. I wanted to open it to see when I could book a train to run away, but decided to open the texting app on her phone. I saw a whole list of texts where my mom was telling family members not to get me any gifts. The text said that I was on punishment and needed to learn a lesson. that I would get a different gift another time. This all made sense now. Everyone knew I existed, so why did they not give me a gift? I didn't want to deal with this anymore. So as soon as we got back home, I began packing my necessities, and I booked a train ticket from Trisha's laptop. Some people may find this to be overdramatic, but this had been happening for most of my life, and I was absolutely sick of it. I decided on not leaving a letter since it wasn't worth the effort to write anything for my neglectful parents. And though I resented my sister for not saying anything, she wasn't entirely horrible to me, so I wrote an apology note for her. The following week, I had just turned 18. Now that I was legally an adult, I could go. I snuck out in the morning and walked the 10 minutes to the train station. I got on my train and was finally free. Okay, so maybe it wasn't that easy. It had been 2 hours into my trip when one of the train attendants came up to me and asked if I was the daughter of Jana and Hayden. I said I was, and she told me that they wanted me home and that I needed to go since I was a minor. I quickly showed the woman my license and all of my legal documents. I explained that I was definitely 18 and was allowed to leave home. The attendant left me alone after that. I landed in this new city and things were very tough at first, but since I'd been responsible for myself for a long time and had done good in my high school classes, I was able to find an internship for this tech company. I was also lucky enough to find a welcoming family who let me stay at their home for little rent. Eventually, the tech company offered me a scholarship to one of the top technology universities in the country. I was completely ecstatic and accepted the offer. So then I attended this university and earned my degree. Right after graduation, I got a job at the same tech company again. So that's where I am today. I have a good job, good pay, and now I live in my own apartment with a boyfriend who is very good to me. Of course, I also paid the family that let me live with them back with lots of money and gifts. They still invite me over for Christmas. I finally stopped hating Christmas too. It's pretty cool how I was able to turn my life upside down for the better and get away from my narcissistic family. Oh, speaking of my family, I then recently got a call from Jana on my business number. She had seen my name as one of the main CFOs of the tech company and is now calling to get financial help from me. Mom and Dad are now becoming broke since they continue to get gifts and throw huge parties for Trisha, to the point where she's gotten very popular with kidnappers. Apparently, my parents were also asking for money because of Trisha. She'd been kidnapped and my parents had to pay the ransom money. But then, when Dad went to pick Trisha up, the kidnappers thought that Hayden had alerted the police and beaten him up until he needed to go to the hospital. I was annoyed, since Mom only called me to pay for hospital bills and to pull them out of debt. I instantly smirked and responded to her in a very cold manner. Well, you're on punishment now. I can't give you anything. Isn't that what you told all of my aunts and uncles many years back? See how it feels now? I can't be helping someone that hasn't been there for me for so many years. Bye, Mom. Tell Trisha that I miss her. I ended the call there, and I've gotten text messages from both of my parents and Trisha, but I never responded to any of it. My boyfriend says I was a little too harsh to them, but I don't think so. I would never want to let them leech my money for something that doesn't even benefit me at all. But what do you think? Thank you for listening.